Welcome to this online training on final reporting and controls for projects. As you know, one of the key challenges faced for your project closure is the preparation of the final report. The better it is prepared, the smoother and quicker the final payment. But you also need to be ready for the requirements that remain after the final payment is processed, during the so-called open to control period, to avoid risks of recoveries. As obligations may differ from one program to another, please make sure to always check carefully your program requirements. The procedure for the preparation of the final report is often similar to the procedure for the preparation of the interim report. However, usually the scope of the final report is wider, since it includes information which summarizes the whole of project implementation. The final report must be submitted within a limited time after the end of the project implementation period, usually 3 to 6 months, depending on your program requirements. To make sure you meet this deadline, you need to start preparing your final report several months before the end of implementation. Remember also that some of the project staff may still need to be working at finalizing the report even after the project end. The costs related to the preparation of the project final report, of the verification of expenditures, and of the final evaluation can often still be incurred after the end of the project implementation period, though not later than the date of submission of the final report. And they must be included in your final report. However, check carefully your program and contract-specific requirements, as in some cases, you may be required to incur and pay some or all of these costs before the end of implementation. The project partners, Anna, Boris and Carla, will now be closing their cross-border cooperation project in 3 months' time. Let's see how they're preparing for their final reporting.
Hi Anna. Hi Boris. Good to see you. Thanks for sending the updated values for the indicators. I've aggregated the figures to prepare for the final report. Let's have a look. Seems to me we've done well overall despite the constraints.
Yes, and thanks to the project extension, the plants have been put in place now. But we will not see the effect at result level within the project lifetime, so our target will not be met within the deadline.
As regards awareness raising on eutrophication, we were able to develop the information material and manage some regional events, but our big annual Happy Water event had to be cancelled twice because of meeting restrictions due to the pandemic. So our indicator, number of participants in the information events, is less than anticipated.
The final report should focus on the achievement of the project's objectives and results and related indicator targets. If an indicator's final value is less than anticipated, you need to clearly justify in the report why you could not reach the target. If you could not deliver some activity, you need to explain why and explain the impact it had on the project. You also need to explain how the related costs were used for other purposes, if agreed, or whether it led to underspending.
Yes, indeed. Because of the travel restrictions, we've had to invest in online meeting equipment and subscriptions. We'll need to explain this in the narrative report and include it in the financial report.
And we'll add the written approval we received from the managing authority. As regards the financial data, I have aggregated your data, but I understand this is not final. What are the costs still to be included?
We will still include the payment of the invoice for the plantations. I'll pay it next week.
We'll only have the staff costs to prepare the report.
And of course, we'll still have to include the cost of verification of expenditures by the auditors. Do you think you could have your financial reports sent to your auditors in the week following the end of the implementation period? We need enough time for the auditors to verify your reports, then to compile your reports into the project final consolidated one and get it verified before we submit it.
Yes, it should be okay.
Yes, I'll start preparing it and gathering the supporting documents right now so as to be ready on time.
Have a look at our written guidance, including tips and recommendations on preparing your final financial reporting. And remember to check carefully your program-specific requirements related to the final report. But sending the report is not the end yet. Make sure you have appointed a contact person in each partner organization that can answer the questions from the Program Managing Authority or Secretariat about your final report after it has been submitted. Often, the program authorities request some clarifications or additional information before proceeding with the calculation of the final payment. Someone in your organization should be able to answer even if the project manager doesn't work for your organization anymore. Be aware also that the balance for the final payment will be calculated by the managing authority, based on the approved expenditures and the previous pre-financings. If you have spent less money than was planned, or if some of your expenditure is not accepted, you may not receive a final payment, but on the contrary, be asked to give some money back. If the total final eligible expenditure is less than originally foreseen, the balance of the final amount of the grant to be paid will be less than the amount stated in your grant contract, as the managing authority's contribution is limited to the percentage of eligible and accepted costs. If the total amount of pre-financing is higher than the amount of accepted costs, the managing authority will issue a recovery order, and the difference should be paid back by the beneficiaries to the program. Remember also that some contractual responsibilities of the project partners remain even after the final payment has been received. Each beneficiary shall keep all records, accounting and supporting documents related to the project for 5 years after the balance payment. Ex post monitoring, auditing and checks can still be carried out during this period, notably by representatives of the Managing Authority, the Audit Authority, the European Commission, the European Court of Auditors and other authorized bodies. They should have an easy access to documents, information systems, including accounting, infrastructure and equipment financed by the project. To be ready for this open to control period, you should ensure that the partnership agreement remains valid until the end of the open to control period and that it includes all the necessary clauses to allow smooth after closure procedures. That the original documents and the computerized systems are easily retrievable during this period. Check that all project documentation, and not only the financial one, is complete and organized in such a way to allow a smooth control even with little knowledge of the project. The easiest is to have at least electronic copies of all the documents and material archived by the lead beneficiary. Additionally, all partners must keep the originals in a clearly designated location. Some ad hoc procedures may need to be put in place if the national rules provide for a shorter retention period of such records. You should also ensure that your organization, and not just you, is aware of the obligations remaining during the open to control period, and that a contact person in each partner organization keeps adequate knowledge of the project and of its archiving system during this whole period. Have a look at our written guidance for further information on which materials to archive for the open to control period. Some specific obligations may also apply after project closure, in particular as regards the project infrastructure, equipment and results. In case of projects with an infrastructure component, it should not be subject to a substantial change affecting its nature, original objectives or implementation conditions within at least 5 years after the project closure. If it is modified, the managing authority will recover some of the funds. The publications produced within the project and funded by the program such as guidelines, training material, or studies, must be appropriately disseminated before the project end and usually remain available to be used freely and free of charge after project completion. Some rules regarding information and visibility also still apply several years after project closure. Depending on program-specific requirements, for instance, visibility signs placed on the equipment purchased must remain during the equipment lifetime, while information boards placed on infrastructure must remain in place during at least 5 years after project closure. To conclude, keep in mind that your project closure process is a lengthy one, and that obligations remain long after the submission of your final report. We wish you a very smooth closing of your project. We hope you've had a rewarding cross-border cooperation experience and that you have enjoyed this series of tutorials.